You're listening to Security Pro Insights. Is it possible that the value we bring to an organization has nothing to do with our own abilities, rather the abilities brought together due to the strength of the relationships of others around us and what they bring to help us with our organization? Today's guest, Tom Hall, strongly believes that the number one key to success is the strength of your business relationships. Today, Tom is going to walk us through many techniques to help us build and maintain these strong, long-lasting, professional relationships needed for our success. Tom, I want to thank you for joining us today. Would you tell the audience a little more about yourself?
Sure. Thank you for inviting me. The name is W. Thomas Hall. I'm a native New Yorker, but I also claim Virginia as home, not as a right of birth, but as a right of choice. I describe myself as an executive management professional with over 38 years of experience in national and international experience from public safety, global security, risk management, logistics, leadership development, training, employee engagement, executive protection, and law enforcement. I've held a series of positions: Director of Organizational Health and Security for Pathology Laboratories, Global Security and Safety Director, Global Dynamics Force Protection, Security Manager, Senior Security Manager, Dell, Deputy Director, Global Security, Capital One, Chief of Police and Public Safety, Virginia State University. And in Virginia State Police, I was Lieutenant, Sergeant, and Trooper. And as Lieutenant, I ran a security detail for the governor and a whole inactive DOD security clearance.
Now that is one full resume. Kudos to your impact on the industry. And I want to thank you again just up front for taking some time to invest in the industry with this podcast. We have many young listeners, though, who are early in their careers. Some maybe still in university trying to figure out what life is going to look like. Can you maybe walk me a little through your life of when you started and how you got to where you are today, and just some of the things that happened that just happenings along the way? Just help us see what that story looked like.
Sure. I'm a product of the South Bronx section of New York City. I didn't choose policing. Policing chose me. It was a difficult community. It was the most active fire department in the United States of America. So there was always fires and there was always crime. And so there was always policing and there were always arrests. And I didn't like the exchange. I didn't think that that I was treated as well as I would have liked to have been treated. So I decided then and there that I wanted to be on the other side of the badge. So it was my career goal to become a police officer. I chose the Virginia State Police because I had family in Virginia, and it gave me an opportunity to move outside of New York City and see something else for one of the first times. And that's when I chose my career to Virginia State Police. My game plan was to become a Virginia State Trooper, retire, have grandchildren, and that would be it. But several things happened during the course of my career. I have to go to the Executive Protective Unit, and at the time there had never been an African American in the history of the state. So I was the first black male who was assigned to the Executive Protective Unit, and subsequently I was promoted to sergeant, and I wound up running the detail. I was there through several governors, and that gave me exposure and travel experience on Executive Protective to different countries in Europe and Asia. And from there, and after promotion, I saw an opportunity to become a police chief at Virginia State University. And Virginia State University at the time had the second highest number of crimes of any state-supported college. But I figured out the value of relationships. So I formed a partnership with the Student Government Association. And within 3 years, Virginia State University became one of the 4 safest campuses in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And we did that based on the quality of our relationships with the students. They began to trust the police, which had been unheard of prior to that. From there, Capital One heard about me. The guys that said, "What's in your wallet?" They were 3 years old. They brought me in as a security manager to start building the security infrastructure as they built sites across the country, and at the time in UK. So I was traveling, building sites and put in physical security for that organization. And then I was recruited by Dell to do likewise in Nashville, in Ohio, and we secured environments for Dell. And then I was recruited by General Dynamics Land Systems Capital One, not Capital One, Force Protection in Charleston, South Carolina. So there we were building armored vehicles for the military. And I was able to set up security for 300 of our mechanics in Kuwait. Kuwait was the place where we fixed vehicles that were damaged in theater. And so my role was to make sure that I had safe places for our folks to live and make sure they were safe while they worked on the vehicles for our warfighters. And from there, I was recruited by my present employer, and I'm here now at an anatomical pathology laboratory, a series of laboratories across the U.S. called Morocco Life Sciences, where I built a security and safety infrastructure. That's kind of what started out as a state trooper, and my career just kind of mushroomed because every time I saw an opportunity to do something different, I was open to it. And I did not always know how to do it. I didn't know how to be a police chief on a campus, but I certainly had enough contacts to fall back on folks when I needed advice. It was about the quality of my relationships. So if I've been successful at anything, it's my ability to connect with people across generations. The quality of my relationships have inspired performance and gained trust and encouraged and motivated other people, and that has pushed me forward. So if I have to give credit to anything, it's the quality of relationships that I've developed over the last 38 years.
Now, I'm just kind of curious, and this is a little bit of a hot topic across the U.S. I'm in the St. Louis, Missouri market. Many that watch news know of Ferguson, Missouri. How much of this relationship or the importance of relationships goes back to your days in the South Bronx when you just didn't feel like you were treated the way you deserved to be treated at that time? Was that kind of the root of you saying, you know what, if you treat people well and build relationships, things can happen? Does it go all the way back there, or when did you start having a fond taste for strong relationships?
It started right then and there. You're so right. You're on point. That's where it started because I didn't feel like I had the relationships, and I didn't know. I'm a kid. I'm a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old. I didn't know how to develop those relationships with that part of the community. So I just, fell back. And then after I was able to get into a statewide organization and get that exposure to policing, and the Virginia State Police was unique because it was a 26-week live-in academy. So we lived at the academy in Richmond, Virginia, for 26 weeks, and we were out Friday nights and I'd be back in the bed on Sunday evenings. So I lived with 36 other people and got to exchange information with folks all across that particular state. And then once you hit the road and you hit the streets, troopers are assigned to counties. So once I was assigned to two of the 95 counties of Virginia, in order to affect crime, you have to impact communities by your relationships. You're not going to get information if you're not approachable. I mean, something as simple as walking into a restaurant at 6 foot with a 10 millimeter, a couple of gun clips, handcuffs, and a Smokey the Bear hat. I'm an imposing figure for a child. And for a mother to say, if you don't stop doing that, I'll get that state trooper to arrest you. Well, right away, that puts me in a bad light. So I have to go over and explain to the child that the hat comes right off. And I'm the guy that you reach out to if you're in trouble. Right away, change that dynamic so they'll want to be in a relationship with us. So for me, every time someone left my presence, I want them to walk away thinking, the Virginia State Police is a wonderful organization, and I'm so glad to have met that state trooper. So I bought business cards at my own expense because I wanted everyone. As a kid, I played basketball, and the coach told us when someone is watching you play ball, that's a clinic for them. So when I'm engaged in policing and providing a service for that community, when someone is watching me, how I police, that's a clinic for the community. This is how a citizen is treated. This is how anyone is treated that approaches me that's in my sphere of influence.
Tom, this is not the purpose of our call, this particular question, but I have to ask it. We had a former guest, Larry Grant, in season 1, a good friend of mine, also an African-American man, also former law enforcement, made it many different roles within the security industry. And he actually wrote a blog article on community policing, and he feels that the fix to much of the discord starts at community policing. Really, just as you said, it's the relationship of just treating others with respect as human beings across the board. Again, I don't need a long answer, but would you kind of agree that this community policing concept of just really getting down to the relationships with the people may be one of the potential fixes to some of the law enforcement discord we see today?
Hats off to Larry Grant. Absolutely. As a police chief at Virginia State University, my community policing initiative was policing the hip hop generation. We did not know how to police that generation. So we asked them to serve as our quasi board of governors. Tell us how you want to be treated. One of the first things they told me is that, Chief, we do not want to be bum rushed. I said, absolutely. Now, what does that mean? So they had to help us with the vernacular because I had no idea. They helped us with the vernacular. So we figured out how they wanted to be policing. If I go into a restaurant, I want my steak rare. But if I don't tell the provider that I want it rare and they made it well done, that's on me. So they told us how they wanted to be policing. We policed them the way they want to be policed. They want to be called yes, sir, yes, ma'am, just like the faculty. They didn't want to be called by their first names. We did not know that. We started treating them the way they wanted to be treated. All of a sudden, our hotline, Drop a Dime on Crime, went wild. So we knew where all the cop spots were. We could initiate all the arrests. So we were able to clean up our community. So policing, yes, I totally agree that community policing, it's what changed the community that I was responsible for policing.
Well, I hope that the message that Larry put out and even this podcast and others can go forth in a very effective way just to bring healing to many communities across America because it is important. Now, we did want to talk about relationships. That's the whole purpose we got here. We talked about business relationships, and we're already talking about community relationships. At the end of the day, a relationship's a relationship. And when you and I first started talking, I had mentioned that we're living in a society of people who really struggle with maintaining strong relationships. We have an extremely high divorce rate across America. And I believe that then with that divorce rate, we have a lot of children who have never seen strong, lasting relationships. And we're starting to see this snowball effect, in my opinion, of business relationships that are not necessarily strong and healthy and maintainable. I'm going back to your introduction. To me, it sounded like you did not plan out your career. It happened to you, but it really did all stem from relationships.
Absolutely. The security industry, they can never be a better industry to set the example for how to manage relationships. We're called because we sell trust and services to an environment. They ask us to come in and help make that environment safer. We cannot do our jobs unless the client is in relationship with us. And when I say in relationship with us, that means that we have to have a mutual agreement on a desired outcome. There's got to be a full partnership for us to be in a relationship. And once they're in a relationship with them, we can deliver services back and forth. And we're always looking for ways to enhance that relationship. And how we look at it on our side of the house is from on the security side, we don't want to be their contractor. We don't want to be their vendor. We want to be their strategic partner. They can't realize their objectives without bringing us in. That creates that partnership. And then it's like I grew up in the South Bronx, so there was a lot of Latin music. I do cha cha, right? So in the cha cha, it's a go forward and go backwards, go forward and go backwards. Whatever takes place, we're in this together. When the company is having a challenge, we want to do whatever we can to enhance that challenge. When you walk into the front desk of any one of the buildings I'm responsible for, that person sitting at the front desk is part of my team. They're the ambassador for the company. The first 2 minutes, you're going to make up your mind about that company because you walk in the front door. My person is going to tell you what a great company is by their appearance and by their conversation. So that's where the relationship starts. When you dial one of your clients, Scott, and they look down and see caller ID, if you haven't made an impact, they're not going to be a little hesitant about picking up that call. So there's no business without clients. They're our partners, and they're our very oxygen in the security industry.
I cannot agree more. Absolutely, it is key. And it comes down to treating others with respect. And you had mentioned that very early. I'm kind of curious. you've already mentioned a few items, but if we were just to sit there and put a little list of 4 or 5, maybe even more items, little quick things you can do with someone to establish initial relationship. We talked about just treat them well. You just mentioned smile. What are a few things that you would say, hey, this should be a part of your greeting in order to make someone just feel comfortable and establish that initial rapport?
First and foremost, when we do our little ambassador program, the first thing we ask them is make sure that they give what that we consider clients, anyone that approaches them, make sure they give them their full and undivided attention. Scott, there's nothing worse than being in a conversation with someone and then they reach for their mobile device and take a call. I said, so do not break eye contact. So my training to them is when you're in conversation with a client, the whole world stops. There's no one in the world any longer besides you and the client. You give them your undivided attention. And if you have to look away to do something, you says, excuse me, sir, while I get this information for you. Thank you very much. So they know that you're taking care of their need immediately and you're the most important person in that sphere. So one thing is to make sure that they feel like they're the most important person. They feel that their needs have been taken care of. They feel very comfortable and they feel safe. So when they're in our presence, it's comfort, great client service, customer service, and they know that their needs are being taken care of when they're in our midst.
And then again, I would assume smile, strong handshake, good appearance, all of these things are important as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I said I've been in the industry 38 years, right? Well, my suit doesn't have to look like it, right? Okay, just because I've been in the industry 38 years, you shouldn't figure that out by my attire. I should dress as modern as I can, and I should look as if I have some energy about me. I don't expect folks to drag out of bed and look that same way. Once you arrive there, when we teach employee engagement, we say it doesn't start when you get to the building. It starts in the parking lot. When I'm walking through the parking lot and the employee makes eye contact with me, that's when it's on and it's popping. It says, "Good morning, glad you're here. Now we're going to have a great day because you're here." So you make sure that everybody feels special. Everybody's special. Everybody's treated as if we couldn't do it without them because we actually can. So we treat everyone as though they were a customer because they actually are. So from the security world, everyone is our client.
Yeah, I just wanted to hit on that and hear from you because they say the average attention span these days is 8 seconds. I think a person makes a decision if they like someone is within that 8 to 10 second range. And really, that's barely enough time to get your name out. So, whether we like it or not, often people are making decisions on if this relationship will go further than 10 seconds based on the way we look, the way we act, and just overall body language and appearance.
Absolutely. That's why the appearance is utmost. And I said it all starts at the top. It starts with me. I come in and I look a certain way. Based on the way that the director looks, it goes down from there. They can't dress any less than this. This is the way we look when we come because our whole team is going to be judged by any member of the team. So we're all going to just give it our very best every day. And this is our expectation 8 days a week.
One of the things that really jumped out to me, Tom, as you were talking about your team and how you interact with people, it seems like, especially internal to your organization, because as security managers, our internal departments are our customers. It seems like you don't give individuals a profile of, oh, they're important or they're not. You're treating everybody with the same level of respect. Is that correct?
That's correct. When someone says, "Tom, do you have a minute?" the answer is absolutely. Look, I have an office here. Very few of us have an office these days, but the way our company's led, I have an office. There's a noticeable difference in my door than the other doors. At the end of the shift, all the other doors are locked. I asked facilities to take the lock off my door because I want to make sure that the employee population knows that I'm like 7-Eleven. I'm open 24/7. And if I'm not sitting right here, there's a phone number where I can reach 24/7. Security is always available. We're the team that's always available. He said, "Well, aren't you worried they're going to steal something?" I said, "Well, I've got books. What are they going to do? Go read and learn something? It's okay. I don't need a lock." Make them feel like this is their office. So the security organization, we work for them. So we become an integral part of them. They feel comfortable to come in at any time. And unless I'm on the line like I am with you right now, the door is going to be open. That's the way you have an open environment to make sure it's inviting for everyone and everyone feels a part of it. We can't engage in security initiatives without them because we need information. You know, security is dead without information. So the type of job that I have, I need to hear a mouse urinating on cotton in the corner. I need to know everything that's going on around this site, right?
Right.
So you know my allies are going to let me know. You know my housekeepers are going to tell me if they've seen a strange vehicle going across the lot. My facility guys are going to say we were up on the roof and look what we saw in the building next door. So everybody's in this together. Everybody's communicating because they know it's open here. Leave me a note. Leave one of the guys a note. Call us on the phone. We're 24/7. It's all about you. So make them all feel like they're part of the team. So we feel our client relationship starts with our internal clients before it goes outside.
I'm kind of curious if you can give me a little story, and I'm sure you can with 38 years of experience. But this day and age, there are a lot of books, a lot of podcasts, a lot of gurus who are talking about effectiveness and efficiency. And I will tell you that a key part of that conversation is eliminating useless conversations around the water cooler, down the hall, whatever the case may be. It's get rid of all that stuff and focus on efficiency. I hear you say something a little different, saying that efficiency is important, but so is relationship. Do you kind of have a story that you could share that might show where the relationship provided as much, if not more value to you than what I'll call effective working?
Sure, I did a few workshops, and I was doing a workshop on employee engagement, and I was asked by one particular executive leader to do a workshop on engagement for their particular team, and I said sure, but those trainings have an expiration date. Can we start with getting your team members to start speaking to us? What do you mean? I said, you guys at that level don't talk to us. You don't say good morning. You don't make eye contact. You don't make us feel like we're part of the family here. I said, I can do the lesson plan and anyone can deliver that. But it's changing the culture that's going to change the impact that you have on the organization. And once you get all the folks here excited, they're going to excite their customer base. So it starts here. It's kind of hard to get someone at home to sell your product when they don't feel good about the managers that they're working for. So we kind of had to impact the culture and change the culture to make everyone feel like they matter and everyone is just important. You know, we can't do it without the least down to the custodian. Everyone in that building should know the custodian's first name. I mean, they do a service that's so significant. If they stop doing their job, none of us could use the latrine. How important is that? Okay, so the most significant person in the building is actually the guy that keeps the building humming, the guy that keeps the restaurants flowing. That's the most significant person in the building. So I just kind of had to flip the script. You know, the titles, it's not about your title, it's about your impact. And you don't have to wait to get entitled to impact. So what we've taught in our leadership classes is don't wait to get a title to start leading. You lead from where you are. If you see something needs to be done, you've been empowered to start moving on it. If there's a little water on the floor, you don't have to wait for the facilities person. Take charge. Make sure that's taken care of so your coworker doesn't slip and fall. Everybody's in charge. Everybody rules the building here. We're all in this together.
When everybody's working together as one team, you save a lot of time then in investigations, or you're probably even more effective proactively because everyone's watching out for you due to the relationships you've established.
Absolutely. So in these times, domestic violence has become a major problem for the office buildings because domestic violence grows into workplace violence. Well, when you train the employee population to look out for one another, they're going to notice a change in Scott's behavior. They'll notice if Scott comes to work with a black eye, a bloody nose, clothes in disarray, before one of the leaders will. So now, once they're trained to be your eyes and ears to say, hey, you got a minute? Look, Scott looks pretty bad this morning. Can we get HR or someone to interact with him? He won't talk to me. Now we're off to investigate to find out what's going on before that domestic issue comes to the workplace. So we have a vested interest in making sure that every employee touches each other each day. So we'll make sure that everyone is in sync. Now we got hundreds and hundreds of people kind of walking around looking out for each other. That changed the whole dynamic.
You know, relationships seem simple on the front end. You smile, you get to know each other, you share a few beers, you talk about your kid's baseball game. Unfortunately, in every relationship, times of discontentment come, whether it be jealousy, whether it be a misunderstanding, whether someone has a promotion that you didn't get. So many different areas, whether it be at the home or even within the office. How do you effectively deal with that when that comes up? Because at some point, someone's going to get mad at someone else.
Scott, you got to forgive and move on. I started my career with a deficit. What are we only three? There were only three African American sergeants in the whole state police organization. What was that? 900 or 1,000 out of 900, 1,000 of just three supervisors. So I can have an attitude. I could have an attitude and say, we're not getting our just due. We should have been put. But at some point, you got to just forgive and move on. Say, look, man, it's about tomorrow. I can't be all upset about what took place before I arrived. It's about the future. It's about building my brand today. So sometimes you just got to forgive and move on. And you just got to know when to say when. If you can't fix it, move on. It's like a relationship with the guy. You guys are starting to get in arguments. It's not working. Wish him a good life and move on. You need that positive energy to give to someone else that you're building up. So those things, I didn't let those things just impact my future. And I wouldn't want those listeners to let that impact their future. Say, well, this guy's not being realistic. This guy's not being fair. Is there a way to get around that? Is there a way to just say, okay, this is who he is? If you can't manage that, can you move on to something else? I didn't want those things to take away from my energy. I had some ideas and some things and some places where I wanted to go, and I didn't want that to impact me. You can go as far as you're willing to go, and your ambition and your talent and your skills can take you there if you have the right relationships.
That seems so easy to say, at least. Just forgive, forget, and move on. What can you tell the person who's struggling with that? Is there a couple tools you could give them to get better at doing that? Because
Sure.
it's just not an easy thing.
Well, first of all, each one of us that has a career needs a board of advisors. Okay, I didn't have all the answers. I'm 24 years old. I don't have all the answers. But I knew three or four other people and they were in my life. So this is my personal board of directors. I've never not had a small board of directors where there's folks that I can lean on, people that love me, people that care about me, I can go to for advice. I'm not going to have all the answers. There are people that I can go to and I can blow off the steam. Because once I come to work, I don't want anyone to see that. You don't want to bring that anger with you into the workplace. Because this is a place that I want to help grow others and I want to excel my career. So that's one of the ways that I do it. I've always had folks in my life that I surround myself with that I can go to and say, oh man, let me tell you what happened to me, Jimmy. This was just so wrong. And I'm going to surround myself with positive people that have gone through some of the things that I've gone through. And they'll be the first to tell you, you can't win all the battles. And you can't make it without relationships. So in some things in life is just not fair. Get over it. That's just the way it is. But it's wonderful. And we got to experience it. But we got to be smart enough to manage these things that come in. They just can't suck up all of our energy. That's when I say forget and move on. You know, and you got to invest in these relationships. Scott, I had a relationship with we had a partnership with an insurance company, and I wanted to make sure they knew when they came to sit down with us, we were going to be very very different. How much we appreciated them, to the point where we did a little bit of research. They had a symbol. Their symbol was this deer. So we wanted to make sure that we knew that that deer was a stag, and we wanted to know that that deer was called the monarch of the glen. We wanted to make sure they knew that we were going to do some investing in the background. We were so appreciative of that partnership that we were going to take the time to know all about their business. So invest that time in your client base. Invest that time in those relationships. Those folks gave me one heck of a reference for others. So I try to spend all that energy in getting these relationships off the ground and in building my personal brand so that others will promote my brand for me.
Whether it be promotion or building ourselves up, I want to go back to that board of advisors. I see a lot of people who surround themselves with individuals that speak into their life, but they do not necessarily speak the right things. So, how do you go about, if I want to become better, how do I go about finding these individuals who can help me be better when I'm going through a struggle? They don't just take my side, nag me on to make foolish decisions. They build me up and encourage me to make better decisions with the long term future in mind. How do I find these people to build this board of advisors?
You got to do your homework. I remember when I was with a company called Force Protection. They were bought up by General Dynamics, and there was a vice president there. In his career, I mean, he went from director to vice president. You know, it looked like overnight. I mean, his career just moved so fast. So I was determined that I didn't know what to talk about with this guy. I was determined I was going to meet him. So first I went online to learn as much about him as possible. And then after I learned about him, I developed a relationship with him. He agreed to have lunch with me once a month. So once a month I could learn from this guy. Well, guess what? I was doing that with about 8 other people. Okay, so within the same company, I was learning from these guys that were just on this successful path. I was learning from each one of them in different areas and different environments. You go to people and say, well, look, you know, you're doing so well here. Do you know people in your life that have helped you when you were at a stalemate? You'll see they'll recommend people to you who they've used. You know, go to these folks that you see that are doing so well. I was really bashful. I wasn't sure how to approach this guy, and someone told me that he was really into baseball. Well, I didn't know a lot about baseball, so I did a little bit of homework on his favorite baseball team and things he likes. So I can have that kind of dialogue with him. So for each one that I was going to approach, I had to find what did I have in common with each one of them. Generally, it was nothing. So I actually had to do homework to figure out what I would have in common with them, so we can have an intelligent conversation, and then bring the conversation to me how they can help me in my career. And not one of them ever turned me down. And not one of them looked like me. Not one of them had a background like I had. But every one of them had a position that I wanted. And they helped me get it.
Wow, you just hit on another item that I think is so key for parents and again spouses. So this works in any relationship. You just said that you put your selfishness beside or to the side, even though you really didn't care about baseball. You decided to become interested in what the person you had interest in was interested in. That is a very key point that you drew out there. I'm not sure it was fully on purpose or not, but to me, that can be used in any relationship that you're dealing with in life.
It was definitely put up on purposely because, God, there's one thing that everybody likes to talk about themselves. So if you have something in common, you can find a commonality with this person. They cannot wait. I'm 38 years old. To this very day, I still have a relationship with my sixth grade teacher. We had a reunion last summer in New York City. Every couple of years, I go back and sit down with Mr. Howard Levine because he helped get this party started for me because I wanted to drop out of school. I've never forgotten Mr. Levine. So when we talk about relationships, the other thing you have to do is have a great calendar. Remember people, become thoughtful. I don't have a great memory, but I've got a great damn calendar. Okay, I know when Mr. Levine's birthday is. I know when all my mentors' birthdays are. All the folks that reported on my teams, I know the significant dates in their life, their anniversaries, their kids' birthdays. I have all those things. So they said, Tom is this guy that just doesn't forget. Oh man, sure I forget, but I do my homework. When someone gives you a business card, what do people mostly do? They look at the business card and they say, "Oh, yeah, Scott Holman, good to meet you, Scott." And they push it in their pocket, right? Well, as a personal protection specialist, it was called bodyguard in my day. Traveling around the world with different governors, we always had to take classes before we went to another state to make sure that we didn't embarrass the Commonwealth of Virginia. So I was taught how to hold the business card when we go into Asia with both hands. Look down and read the name back to the person as you look him in the eye with the amount of respect. Automatically put it in your pocket. So now, every opportunity you get to know more about that individual, and what I would do is flip that business card over when I got back in to write some things down about that individual. So if I know I'm going to be in their company again, I would write down some things he told me. Well, he said that his daughter was graduating in such and such a year, or he told me he was from this particular state, or he grew up in this particular city. So I would have something. I learned that from one of the governors, that they always had us taking notes on people they were meeting for the first time if they were going to meet these folks again, so they would not have a cold conversation. So these are all tips on building those relationships so that nobody is like it's the first time you're meeting them. You give everybody a firm handshake and a warm smile, and it's legitimate.
I just heard one other item in that is we're talking about business relationships, but you quickly move that business relationship to personal, don't you? So that they know that you actually care about them.
Yes, when I was assigned to one of the governors I was assigned to, I hate to say he was one of my. I won't say the name that way. I wanted to say it was my favorite governor, but I just loved the way that he interacted with people, and I would watch him. And when we were in a ballroom, we've been in the ballroom because we were doing the advanced security, so we've been there standing up for a long time. And no, he's not late because you can't have a circus without an elephant, right? So whenever he gets there, that's when the party starts. So everyone's waiting until he gets there. They're antagonizing those troopers. When is the governor going to get there? Finally, the governor comes in, and he's shaking hands with all. He shook hands with maybe 22 people going in. This guy. On the way out, he shook hands with each one of them and said their name.
Wow.
Can you imagine the impact that had?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still not that good, but I'm still in practice to try to make everybody feel like that handshake really meant something to me. It was genuine. So that's all part of me building that brand.
You know, I tell my kids, I have a 13-year-old, 11-year-old, 4, and a 1-year-old, but I tell the older two right now that often we tend to step back and say, or we choose not to do something because we're just not that good yet. So we're not as good as the governor. And I want to encourage them, and I want to encourage the listeners right now to always just give it your best, because your best is a whole lot more than the average individual's giving.
Absolutely.
Well, Tom, this has been an amazing conversation. Time is kind of running out on us. Is there anything that we didn't talk about today with relationships that you just feel passionately that we need to hear when it comes to building, establishing, maintaining relationships within pretty much every aspect of our life?
Yes, because we didn't get a chance to talk about the online presence because most of us are online now. And that's another opportunity to build your brand. First of all, if you've never taken a public speaking class, take the public speaking class because it'll make you much more comfortable in your skin. Most folks are afraid to speak in front of an audience. The public speaking class will really help you do that. If you have training opportunities and you can provide training for your clients and others, take advantage of the training opportunities to get you out in front of another audience. And you're constantly building your brand. On your online presence, you get an opportunity to interact in a way that promotes your brand. You and I met because I became a co-creator of a global security leaders network. It gave me an opportunity to enhance the brand. I was very strategic. I used my time wisely online, create a plan to reach out to an audience. Who are the major influencers out there? Tag some of these influencers because they have thousands and thousands of followers. Well, now you're one of them, and it gets you out to the client base you're trying to get to. And follow up and keep your commitment. So, if anything, just build your brand, build your online presence, and always be prepared for another opportunity.
Can I add one thing to that? And I guess I asked for
Sure.
permission. I'm going to add one thing to that. We started pretty much at the very beginning of this conversation talking about the importance of your appearance and body language. Your online presence also has an appearance. Make sure you manage that appropriately.
And Scott, if I could end it with one thing, I would say make your habits more important than your goals. One of my goals is my wife's happiness, but my habit is to call her every evening on the way home. Okay, some habits never break. You can miss a goal, but you don't always miss habits. So make those things that you want to stick habits. Make them habits. If customer care is more than just a goal, you might miss it. But if customer care becomes a habit, you're never gonna miss it.
That's a whole nother conversation. We'll have to have an episode on habits, and that may come in the future. Hey, Tom, I appreciate it very much. Appreciate your time sharing with us. I look forward to the day you and I meet in person. You mentioned it. You and I have a relationship based on the online presence at this moment. That will change here in the future, but for now, I do want to thank you for taking the time, investing in me, investing in this listening audience today.
Thank you, Scott. Take care.